This is Dave Meltzer with Entrepreneurs, the Playbook, and I have a real successful entrepreneur, Moiz Ali, the founder of Native, who has just been acquired by Procter & Gamble. And over $100 million deal, I heard?
$100 million deal.
100 even?
100 even.
You couldn't, I always tell people, put $1 on there.
Yeah.
Because I'm in PR
You want to be able
marketing.
to say over it?
Over, right? Like I tell people all the time, I lost over $100 million.
Yeah, you lost $100 million in $1.
I wish it was, but I don't even know because, on paper, I lost over $100 million.
Fair enough.
All I know is I lost all my cash, and that really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great idea. I guess when I was doing the deal, I was like, I need to close this deal.
Right.
Not like, okay, I'm aiming for the headline after.
You're not above the game yet, but you will be.
Yeah, that's right.
There's so many people that want to build a brand and then be able to be acquired by one of the big conglomerates. And I was talking to you earlier about the $100 million mark. It's so easy for the big companies to come in and take a really good business and make it exponential worldwide. So it's well worth the money to give you a good return, but you have to put the time in. You're not an overnight success. It didn't happen in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And you have skills and knowledge. I want to get into, what skills do you think it was that allowed you to build that company? Because you have a very background like most entrepreneurs.
Sure. I think that there's certainly not one skill that makes somebody successful. I think, and people underestimate how important timing is. If you look at Foursquare, I always think about Foursquare when it launched 15 years ago or 10 years ago, it had this trajectory and then sort of fell off of a cliff. And I'm not sure what would happen if it launched today, whether it be more popular or less popular.
But to that note, I launched the world's first smartphone in 1999 and it failed miserably.
Is that right?
Samsung manufactured phone.
Yeah.
So I got to see what actually would happen with a $1,700 phone that, we ran Windows CE, but it was a true smartphone.
Sure.
I got to see now what would have happened.
Yeah. The timing in the world cannot be underestimated, right? The technology develops. When the original iPhone came out, they weren't even using 3G technology, right? And they encouraged you to develop that with the iPhone too. Timing really matters, and I think a lot of the success of Native was due to the fact that we were in the right category at the right time. The market had sort of headed towards natural or better for you foods, and Whole Foods really paved the way for that. You stopped drinking Coca-Cola and switched to a bottle of water. And the next move after you were paying attention to what you were putting in your body was what you were putting on your body. And deodorant may be the thing that you put on your body every day, and it stays on your body for 23 hours and 45 minutes every day. It's got 95% adoption in the United States. It's a really penetrated category. And so
not so much in France, but in the United States.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and so we were in the right category at the right time, where we the natural food movement had really moved foods towards healthier products, and natural CPG movement was heading in that direction as well.
And did you see that when you started it? Did you see that? Because timing wise, I lied to myself when I was CEO of the PCE phone.
Yeah.
Because I knew I was way early.
Yeah.
And so I was betting on, I'm going to stay in business long enough.
Yeah, that the market will change.
Right, the market will change. And so my philosophy, and even deeper now, is the number one piece of advice I give to entrepreneurs is stay in business.
Yeah.
Because it allows for the hardest thing, because we're on man-made time.
Yeah.
And it's a man-made construct. I now believe in the laws of the universe and universal time, so the only way I can beat it is to stay in business every day. But did you have any type of inclination that you were at the right time?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that started to see the rise of those products in Dwayne Reed's and Whole Foods, the expansion of that category in a really small way. So one of my friends told me that on Etsy, the number one category in 2015 was natural deodorants, or the number one product seller on Etsy was natural deodorants. There was a shift towards the market in that direction.
Yeah.
And then I think where we innovated was, all the products that existed in the market were either incredibly poor or not in the right format. Americans are used to stick deodorants. They're not used to jars where they have to put their finger in and rub the deodorant in their armpits. And that was sort of what natural deodorant was like. They were made for hipsters who lived in Portland, Oregon, and had a bunch of tattoos and piercings. And all of that's fine, except people want stick deodorants. Even those people don't want jar deodorants. And so we're hey, we're going to give you the format that you want. We're going to brand ourselves not as something very hipster or grungy, but something very mainstream and aspirational. And we're going to say, hey, we're going to do what Whole Foods did to the deodorant category.
And so I see this transgression or separation. You have a law degree.
Yeah.
You come from a more traditional education. Sure. Your friends were in the more traditional scope of things.
Definitely.
That weren't dropping out of stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're working hard and studying hard. They had overbearing parents.
Yeah.
No offense to yours.
No.
I'll just talk about my own.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times that is a quality or a skill to be able to take, what those creative geniuses have, and I see this in technology, not just in deodorant, and say, hold on a second, that's a great idea. I always call it the Dick McDonald to Ray Kroc syndrome.
Yeah.
Right? Dick McDonald had this speedy service system, but
didn't know how to scale.
Ray Kroc was a sales guy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then he met the real estate guy and figured that out.
Yeah.
I see you as kind of the Ray Kroc side of things, is that, it's not like you really knew a lot to develop a deodorant, but you knew exactly what would sell, where it would sell, and how to build it.
I think that's right. There are certainly people who are genuine innovators and have shifted the world in unique ways. Look at Facebook, right? No one thought Facebook would, no one knew what Facebook would be like when it launched in 2008, 2009. And it's really shifted the world and connected the world in a very unique way. Creating a natural deodorant is nothing like that, right? We're barely moving the category. The category exists, it has massive penetration. We're just saying, instead of using a product that has all these ingredients you don't understand, don't you think you want to use a product where the ingredients sound a lot safer and are a lot safer? And so I think our shift was something that was very minuscule when it came to the category, as opposed to something, and that's sort of what Ray Kroc did, right? He found an incredible thing that already existed when it came to that McDonald's in California, and he's like, let's put this everywhere in the country.
Right, and own the real estate.
Yeah, and own the real estate. Yeah. That came later on, but he had the vision to be like, you know what, you guys are doing something right here. Yeah. You just don't know how to bring this everywhere.
He invested in himself and went out there to sell that idea to mostly individual entrepreneurs. Yeah. Unlike today, where there's tons of them. Yeah. It was a very traditional work your whole life for the same company. Yeah. Which you see at P&G.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I remember when we were doing the deal with P&G, we took all the P&G guys that came out to dinner, and there were 3 or 4 of them that had come for dinner.
Did you make them pay?
No, we paid.
Really?
Yeah. It's traditional. You pay for dinners when they come to you, which was a little weird for me. I was like, wait, we're supposed to pay? This is the $300 billion company.
Exactly.
My company has 8 people, and we're paying for dinner, but whatever. But we went
in
around
the long run, they paid.
Yeah, that's right, they did. But everyone at P&G, all the people at dinner had been there for a minimum of 20 and generally 30 or 40 years, and the rookie was 21 years. They're the lifers there, and it was really interesting to see that type of to see that type of talent, because one of the things that's amazing about that is you really understand, if you're there for 20 years, you understand P&G infrastructure. What you don't understand is the way that other companies do things, right? You don't understand what outside talent looks like or what outside ideas look like, because basically they you graduate from college or business school, you start at P&G, and their upper management has been there for a really long time. Yeah. And so it's really interesting, when I was coming in and sort of throwing all these ideas out there, it was interesting to see their reaction, because they were really receptive to it. And if I were them, I'd be like,
what are you doing?
Yeah, you have a tiny brand. We own Secret. We own Pampers. Yeah. We're this massive conglomerate. We've been around for 150 years. And it's interesting to see that type of culture.
It's so interesting you say that, because when I graduated law school, I was blessed to go work for West Publishing.
Yeah.
And at that time, West Publishing was 100 years old. Yeah. They owned the contracts for cases and codes. Yeah. You're a lawyer, so you'll more get it than anyone else. But the interesting thing is they had what was Boolean language searching, and they were the first to bring on natural language searching. Yeah. So I went into Dwight Opperman, and I'm 25 years old, and I said, hey, I got this great idea. Yeah. I said, please, let's go buy up the rights to everybody else, the real estate database, the medical, because there's other publishers that are specific to an industry. Yes. Let's go buy them all up or license them access. They don't even know what this is. Yeah. And I didn't know it, but my idea was basically Google. Yeah. And Dwight said, we've been in business for over 100 years. Yeah. We stick to what we know. We are the leaders in legal research. Yeah. That's what West Publishing, the key number system, the digest. Yeah, yeah. And meanwhile, I didn't know, but Anderson Consulting was working at the M&A deal at the time. They'd been valued at $1.2 billion. Within literally 9 months of that conversation, they had sold for $3.4 billion in 1995. Yeah. Which is a lot of money, and that guy owned 70%. Yeah. So in that situation, I was sitting there going, these big companies don't listen.
Yeah.
And it was frustrating. But in essence, they weren't as big as Thomson Reuters, who bought them for $3.4 billion.
Yeah.
And then P&G's $300 billion. To have someone be open to, that is probably why they have $300 billion.
Yeah, and it's why like you can continue to exist post 150 years, right? And continue to like thrive in that type of environment. I think it's really difficult for companies to do that. Like, I'd be much more accustomed to seeing, management behave in the way that you experience versus the way that I experienced. There was a great, I read this book by the founder of Netflix. It wasn't Reed, it was like the other founder, I forgot his name.
Yeah.
And he basically said at one point they were trying to sell their company to Blockbuster. So they flew down to like Dallas, Texas, and met with it was their holiday party. They were all drunk, and Blockbuster's like, we want to have a meeting with you guys tomorrow. So they rented a private airplane, and the CEO's like, can we afford this? And they're like, look, $20,000 isn't going to make or break this company. Like, if we can sell to Blockbuster, great. And if we can't, we lose $20,000, whatever. And so they go down there, and Blockbuster is just treating them like garbage. And they're like, we think you're a $25 million or $50 million company. And they're like, you're insane. We're renting DVDs in a way that nobody has thought of. And Blockbuster was so intransigent in the way that they were thinking, and so frugal when it came to an acquisition price. They didn't realize that this disruptor would destroy their entire company, right? And 5 years later, there's one Blockbuster left in the country,
right.
And Netflix has a multi-$100 billion market cap. It's really easy for the world to shift, and it's really hard for management to sort of be willing to be nimble and thoughtful about that. To the extent that I've experienced P&G management, they have been that way.
But books like that are so important. I really inspire people to read science fiction, to read books like that, to read history, because one, human nature never changes, the human nature, but the technology does. And if you're not reading science fiction, you're not stimulating what's going to happen. But no matter what's going to happen, if you don't understand human nature, and I was really curious, here you were, with a $300 billion company and 8 people company on your side. Did you ever feel bullied by them, or because Blockbuster, ironically, was a bully in some respects?
Yeah, that's right.
And I see a lot going on with P&G that the relationships seem very fair, open, and they don't seem to say, "Hey, we're this enormous gorilla."
Yeah.
Was there any time you felt manipulated or bullied?
Certainly not during the M&A process.
Yeah,
I would say not intimidated ever, but I would say during the M&A process, I thought that they were the best acquirers I could have possibly imagined.
Well, that's a big compliment.
Yeah, they were incredibly transparent. They were upfront. Before we closed the deal, before we even signed the deal, they came to me and they're like, this is how we would anticipate working together post-closing. We'd have calls like this often. We would, we'd want to see these, we'd want to see these types of financials on a monthly basis, or these types of financials on a quarterly basis. We'd want to understand your strategy on a quarterly basis. And when you have those types of meetings pre-signing a deal, there's a lot of deal certainty, right? You sit down and you're like, okay, I'm not
their
afraid.
First rodeo, that's for sure.
I'm not afraid that it's 7 days from now, or the day of closing, you're going to say, actually, you know what? We need to ding you 10% of the price because something happened. I never felt that way.
Yeah.
And that's I've never been married, but I would imagine that if I'm getting married, I'm standing there at the altar, I'd want to make sure my bride walks down that aisle, right?
Right.
And when you're doing M&A, it's very similar, and I never had any fear that they wouldn't be walking down the aisle. And so I really appreciated that. And so I really, I was thankful at how transparent and clear and honest brokers they were. And they hadn't done a deal for 10 years until they bought us.
Wow.
So when they bought us, people, when we were sort of asking other people, P&G hasn't been at the table for a long time. Are they serious buyers, or are they just joking around? And nobody knew the answer, because they're like, we haven't seen P&G
in that space, right?
No. P&G had not done an acquisition for 10 years before they bought us. Not just deodorant, but any category.
Wow, so health and beauty, none of that.
Correct. They were just divesting brands because they were trying to they sold CoverGirl and a bunch of businesses to Coty, but they were making divestitures, and they had not made any acquisitions in a decade. So people were like, who are these people going to close the deal? Are they not? Since us, they've done at least 5 or 6 deals, I think. But that honesty and transparency was something that I really appreciated and still am grateful for.
That's amazing. What advice would you give to an entrepreneur now that thinks they have, the next native?
Yeah, go do it. Don't waste any. When I was a lawyer, my brother and my father are both entrepreneurs, and they'd call me every day and they'd be like, "What are you still doing there? You're working for somebody else that's against our religion, basically.
Right.
Go quit your job today." And I was like, I don't know what I would do if I quit my job. Like, how am I going to pay rent? They're like, you're going to figure all of that out. But like, if you don't jump off of the cliff, like, you're not going to be able to learn how to fly. You can't fly like standing still. And so, you know, certainly I don't recommend somebody who like is not going to be able to pay rent the next month to go ahead and do that. But like, it's very hard for me, and I think other people as well, to sort of be successful at something without giving it all of their effort. And so like, you got to try, and you can't like, you know, don't take any don't waste time to like, you know, writing a business plan and talking to 150 people saying, hey, is this a good idea or not a good idea? People email me all the time and they're like, yeah, I'm thinking about starting this business. What do you think about these 3 different things? I'm like, what do I know about that category? Why are you asking me? Go do this. Be the expert in the field. When I started Native, one of my friends was like, what do you know about deodorant? And I was like, I know nothing, and in 6 months, I'm gonna become one of the world's experts in deodorant. I'm just gonna spend my time learning, and like, I'll figure it out. Go do it. Like, you know, that experience is gonna be worth more than having a bunch of phone calls with like advisors.
That's amazing, because I'm taking away 2 things from that. One, I remember when I was in law school, my dad was an entrepreneur that went to law school and never practiced law. And,
really? Okay.
But he told me, he's like, Dave, you know, got to drop out of law school.
He said that to you?
Yeah. He's like, because I didn't have, he was worried about the loans, because I had to borrow $100,000, which was a lot back then, to go to law school. And he said, look, you got offered this job for 60 grand to sell golf clubs in Japan. It's the start of your entrepreneurial career. Just drop out, take the money, get out of there. And I told him, well, I'm going to be an oil and gas litigator. I'm going to make $1,000 an hour. And my dad, because my blinders were on like this, and he rocked my world when he said, yeah, but how many hours are in a day? And in my mind, I'm thinking, my dad actually believes you can make more than $10,000 or $12,000 a day. And I was doing the math, because still today, when Bezos made $100 billion, like, my blinders were still on as that lawyerly side. Ironically, more lawyers, including my business partner, you know, went to law school. The other one went to law school. The more lawyers hit me up now, after they're stuck. Even last night, one was waiting outside the door. I did a podcast swap with Joe DeSena, waiting outside the door because he's miserable. And I'm sure he's making plenty of money in Manhattan as a lawyer. But
why,
the other, go ahead.
Sorry, why do you think that so many lawyers want to do that? Do you think it's because they hate their job, or do you think it's because you're a lawyer and so they're like, they feel special kinship towards you?
Both. I think, you know, coming from doctor, lawyer, failure environment, or engineer, a lot of people come from that environment, that they follow, you know, I remember even telling my mom, when the recession hit and I was worried about finding a job out of law school, I said, it's not fair. I did every single thing you told me. I'm getting emotional because I was like, this is not fair. You know, and I see so many lawyers that are in their 40s, 30s, and 50s going, this isn't fair. Like, I've done everything my mom told me to do, and I'm miserable. I have a nice house, right? But I'm miserable, and so they see me as someone who has utilized my law degree in a non-traditional way, just like you. And they probably will, after this podcast, come out of the woodwork, you know, to ask advice. The other side is just the jump. You know, and I call it investing in yourself. Other people call it sacrificing. I haven't met one entrepreneur that doesn't have faith. And there comes a point, you're lucky to have 2 of your relatives to help support you with faith. The people that are most interested in are the ones that go against their parents and their uncles and aunts, because they're going to laugh at you, snicker at you. They're all going to say, I told you so. And I'm sure Native had this point where you're worried about payroll. You know, and you're, you know, I had a guy tell me last night, I won't say his name again, but it's like, I know this is politically incorrect, but that pending threat of not being able to make payroll is more painful than childbirth. And I try not to shake my head because my wife always watches these things. But it's a really painful thing. It's an emotional scarring to have everybody riding on you, and you're the belief system and the faith. Last piece of advice is about faith. You have extraordinary faith, whether you think so or not. Where do you go, or what do you think when those times when you're like, I'm not going to make payroll, this is all ending, this isn't going to happen? Where do you go to find that push?
First, I think that's a great point that you mentioned, where like, it's so much harder. Like, you know, for me, I had 2 close relatives that I speak to all the time that are like, go do this, as opposed to being like, don't do this. Like, I can't imagine what would happen if I went home for Thanksgiving every year and was like struggling in my business, and my parents and siblings were like, what the hell are you doing? You graduated from law school and you gave up this this great career and you were making a lot of money and now you suck at life. Like, look at all of your friends, they're super successful, they're making a lot of money, they're getting married and having kids and moving into nice houses, and you're still struggling and living in a studio apartment. Like, that would be something that would be really hard for me to get over, I think. And like, so I'm very grateful that I have like a family of entrepreneurs that encourage me as opposed to like, demotivate me from doing that type of things, those types of things. And I think for me, like when I was losing faith, or when and there were definitely times that happened. Like I remember we grew every month, from when we launched the business to when we sold the business. But from November of 2016 to December of 2017, we only grew like 50K that month. We went from like $1 million to $1,050,000. And our first employee was like, I think we've plateaued. She's like,
right.
And I was like, you think I don't have enough pressure? Like, I'm literally the growth machine at this company.
Thinking that statement.
I'm the growth machine at this company. Like, I have enough pressure. And like now, like my first employee is like, I think I've lost faith in this company already. And I'm like, it's 1 month of 50K growth. Otherwise, we're going 200, 300K a month. And I was like, I almost wanted to cry when she said that to me.
So where did you go when you were about to cry?
Yeah, I guess one, I think I might have cried.
Yeah.
But like in reality, I think like one, my family was super supportive, and so I'd continue to reach out to them. My brother was an entrepreneur, my father's an entrepreneur. I'm sorry, they're both still entrepreneurs, and so I'd call them. And I also we had raised a very small amount of money, but we had raised money from other entrepreneurs. And like those entrepreneurs were really helpful in helping me like reset my emotions.
Yeah.
We raised money from this guy named Nick Green at Thrive Market, and I remember I'd call him and he would be like the most calm person ever. He was
Getting
like a
you back
Vulcan.
to center.
Yeah, he'd be like a Vulcan. And I was like, I think my business, I was like, within a span of 10 minutes, I'd be like, this is the best business ever, to I think we might go out of business, like in a phone call with him.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, let's take a step back here. And I told him this, like after we sold the business, I was like, I'd call you and we'd spend like, we'd spend like 30 minutes on the phone every few Sundays. And he's like, I was like, how do you have this type of like rational thinking when like there's a fire going on? And he's like, it's really easy to be rational about somebody else's business, which I thought was funny. But he's also like, look, you had a good business and you were like so in the weeds in it that you weren't able to take a step back. And so I tried to provide that. And so it was really the investors and advisors we had, and we didn't have a lot of them, that I would be able to pick up the phone and like give them a call. And like, whenever people ask me about raising money, I'm like, you want to raise money from people that you can call when things are going bad, and they're like, how do we solve this solution together? And they're not like, let me go blame you.
Right.
There was one of our investors was like, let me blame you for everything. Like, we received.
I give him his money back.
Yeah, well, I tried to. I actually tried to, and he's like, no. But like, when you call them and they're like, oh, this is all your fault, and you're like, okay, we can go through and blame me for it, and that's a useful exercise at some point down the line, possibly for you. It's cathartic, but like right now, we need to solve this problem because it's like a hair on fire type of emergency, and those are the type of investors I really want to avoid moving forward, and I want to find the ones that like you can pick up the phone and you're like, here's my hair on fire problem, and they're like, let's solve this together right now.
Yeah, and sometimes you just can't.
Yeah,
right.
Definitely. Sometimes you can't.
Well, as a top executive business coach, I think your future holds that type of activity. I think you'd really enjoy it because of the journey and as well as the awareness that you have. I think you can assist as a catalyst to so many entrepreneurs and help them build what you've done, which is the success story, in my opinion, taking a common day product, changing it around, and then creating $100 million exit, which is extraordinary, and I congratulate you for that.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants a great business coach, because I'm booked, get this guy. That's Moiz Ali, David Meltzer, Entrepreneurs, The Playbook.